Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Good afternoon for those who are joining. Welcome to the Wisconsin Women in Conservation Summer Camp webinar today. The camp today is on prairies and pollinators, and we're so glad you could join us. Take a couple minutes to let some more people hop on, and then we'll get started here soon. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. I think we'll go ahead and get started, and as people continue to join, they can hop on. My name is Allison Crook. I work for Wisconsin Farmers Union, and I am the Northeast and Central Area Regional Coordinator for the Wisconsin Women in Conservation Program. We have our other WiWiC team members that are on the call today as well. Could everybody that's on the WiWiC team give a wave? We're all wearing nice matching pink shirts, so that's easy to find us. Please feel free to munch on your lunch today during the webinar. We have two really great speakers who are going to be sharing lots of great information today about prairies and pollinators. To make sure that everybody can hear everybody, we're going to keep you all muted until the end, but I do really want to encourage each of you to use the chat function at the bottom of your screen throughout the webinar today. Please leave any comments and questions that you might have, share any resources, and answer each other's questions. Let's take a moment and practice the chat function now. We'd love it if you could introduce yourself in the chat. If you could tell us your name, where you're tuning in from, and if you'd like, tell us what is your favorite pollinator. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Christina, Amy. Love seeing Kay, where y'all are coming from. Welcome, welcome. Oh, great. Thank you all so much for introducing yourself. We're so happy to have you here from all across the state. So today, we're going to start with a quick introduction of the Wisconsin Women in Conservation Program and our upcoming events. Then we're going to hear from our two content experts, and then after that, we'll have some time for questions. At the very end, we will also have some time for us to chat out loud if folks would like to stay on a little bit longer. But all right, let's go ahead and get started with an overview about the Wisconsin Women in Conservation Program by Sarah George.
Thanks a lot, Allison. I'm really excited to see so many of you today, and I want to do slideshow. View slideshow. There we go. I'm here to tell you just briefly about the Wisconsin Women in Conservation. Thank you for joining us while we're doing this. There are multiple partner organizations that are a part of this project. So it's Wisconsin Farmers Union, Renewing the Countryside, Michael Fields Agricultural Institute, and Marbleseed, working alongside the USDA and e-resources to make this possible. We have 5 regional coordinators located throughout the state. Every one of our coordinators is on the call today, and it's an honor to be a part of this team throughout the region, having each of them out there. So if you want to know who your regional coordinator is, feel free to visit us on our website. You can see what regions each of these coordinators are working in. They're fantastic. With Wisconsin Women in Conservation, what we're trying to do is work with farmers, with non-operators, with beginning farmers and urban gardeners throughout the whole state. creating a space for women to work together and share their stories and talk about conservation and think through how they can get conservation plans implemented in their land. We do this through learning circles, through field days, through lunch and learn webinars like we're sitting on right now, and in addition, through building networks in our communities. And so I just wanted to share that's some of what we do here at Wisconsin Women in Conservation. We started this in 2020. We are now moving into WiWiC 2, which is going to take us through 2025. And here's those regions that we're working in. You can find this map and look a little deeper into this on our website. This is the regions that we are currently working through for the new Tri-County clusters. If you see those regions and you haven't heard about the events, definitely sign up for our newsletter that's on our website. We are down to one summer field day that's left with us right now. That's coming next week at Mayflower Farm, or perhaps the week after. Now I got to think. We have a couple bus tours left this year, adding new is some bus tours and some potlucks, and we're really excited about this. Each of these communities are going to have 2 potluck events in each region, and so keep an eye out for that. And that's with our older region, I'm sorry, along with these bus tours. We have one more summer lunch series that's going to be taking place next month on August 29th. It's going to be on cover crops. That's going to be a very good one for everybody to join, so please join in on that one. And then our fall learning circles are going to be kicking off starting soon, September already. Can't believe we're this far into the summer. So be sure to stay in touch with us on that. And then if you can, if you're an educator, be sure to join us, sign up, watch in our listserv. You're going to see that we do have an educator meetup, and that's going to be taking place on November 14th. So watch, keep an eye out for that, and be prepared to sign up. We're super excited that you're here today, and I'm going to hand it back over to Allison.
Thanks, Sarah. So we are going to hear from our content expert next, Britta Petersen. But while we're waiting to transition and get Britta set for her presentation, we have a little poll that we would love to learn a bit more about your experience with prairies. So if you'll take a moment and answer this poll, and Britta can go ahead and get set up. Thank you, Britta, so much for being here with us today. Wanted to share a little bit more about Britta and who she is and what she does. Britta is a Pheasants Forever Farm Bill biologist. She's a senior Farm Bill biologist and helps with private landowners with technical assistance on their property and enrollment on Farm Bill programs with a focus on habitat creation and management, as well as outreach and education. Britta has been with Pheasants Forever for over 5 years and is based in the Driftless area, covering 6 counties. In her free time, she enjoys hiking, hunting, cross-country skiing, botanizing, and habitat restoration work. Thank you so much, Britta, for being here. We're really excited to hear what you have to share with us.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Do I want to wait for the poll?
I was just trying to type it in the chat. Sorry about that. I'm not getting it to work. I have it on the screen. It's just not.
No worries.
It off. So the poll was about what's your experience with prairies, and if you all want to just type it in the chat. For some reason, it's not popping up, and that happens. So lovely technology we have. So what's your experience with prairies? And it can be anything. The questions that we had pre-populated in there. Oops, now I've got that other one. Were with your experience with prairies. Oh boy, I'm on the wrong screen again. Right here. Do you have a prairie and you're just starting things off? Do you have a prairie and you've had it for a long time? Do you want a prairie, or is this all new to you and you're eager to learn? Sorry about doing it, but if you could put that right in the chat, what your thoughts are and what your experience is with a prairie, that would be fantastic. Thanks, guys.
All right, well, let that go, and if you want, I'll jump right in, I guess. All right, so yeah, Thanks for I'm excited to be here today. Like I said, my name is Britta Petersen. I'm a Farm Bill biologist with Pheasants Forever. I've been on our team for a little over 5 years, and yeah, we have a great crew here in Wisconsin with Pheasants Forever. We do a lot of habitat work, and so I'm excited to kind of share my knowledge and what our team is kind of doing. And so a lot of people ask, like, what the heck is a Farm Bill biologist? What does that mean? And basically, just so that you all know and are aware, we work with private landowners to build habitat. That's the very basics. So we do a lot of work with the Farm Bill cost share opportunities, but we provide technical assistance, do a lot of outreach and education, and we have an awesome conservation community here in Wisconsin, and so we work with a lot of partners to do habitat work. So that's kind of how my role works in the state. And so I spend a lot of time on prairies and native pollinator habitat, and so I'm excited to share that knowledge with you today. So to get started, basically a lot of times people think of, kind of bees and butterflies as our pollinators, which is great, but there's also other ones. So I wanted to make sure that we kind of are all on the same page, figuring that out. And so here they are, here are social and solitary bees. We've got a lot of those out there. A lot of our bees actually are kind of solitary bees, and so you don't think always about those, you think about hives, but there's a lot of solitary ones out there as well. We've got our bumbles. These guys are, bigger and actually are cool because they can fly at lower light and temperature levels, but they grab the flower and will use their abdomen muscles to buzz pollinate. So that's really cool. We've got our butterflies and moths, and these guys can fly longer distances than our bees. So they do a lot of pollination and they sip nectar when they're in there. And this is a picture I took that I just really enjoy. It's a clear-wing hummingbird moth, which is on the left there, but it was a worm day. This is a native field thistle, and you can see there's a bunch of critters on that one flower. So it's a really neat way to show off that there's a lot of use out of one flower, a lot of different pollinator species that may use it. Flies get out there and are maybe smaller in size, but definitely are a group of pollinators. And then we've got our beetles, which I think are actually the most diverse group of organisms in the world, which, who knows that, but they're bulky and clumsy compared to some of our others. So they crawl across flowers. And then we have wasps, which are really kind of more incidental pollinators, but they kind of can keep pest populations in check. So they're in this group, as well as our birds and our bats, which, hummingbird is kind of the one that comes to mind for birds. And obviously this bat picture is not from here in Wisconsin, but you can see they're moving pollen too. So they are a pollinator. So you guys are all here because you do care, but just to put a few numbers on some of this is, you can see here with some of these on the left that they add a ton of dollars to our global economy. The honeybees alone are huge in productivity for our egg world. And really the stat that I always am blown away by is that pollinators are responsible for bringing us 1 out of every 3 bites of food, which is just kind of crazy. And so a lot of our pollinator populations of those different species are in decline in a lot of parts of the world. We're losing bees from our beekeepers from a variety of reasons. Our bumblebees have declined. Our rusty patch bumblebee, which we do have here in Wisconsin, is listed. The monarch butterfly, our friend, is potentially going to be, there's talk of listing that and in real decline. So those 2 sad slides, I wanted to end those 2 slides with some pollinator pictures that I took of ones in the field. They're out there, so they're doing their thing. So we don't have to completely be bleak here, but they do need some help. And so what can we do about it? I kind of have 2 different tracks today to kind of talk about if you're a landowner and options there, and if you're not a landowner, but you still want to help, what you can do about it. So starting with if you're a landowner, we're talking really about the way to increase and help those pollinators on the scale is a native planting. Now, it doesn't have to be hundreds of acres at a time, but still a native planting. The opportunities are out there on a small or a large scale, depending what your opportunity is. So as a landowner or a land manager, really the key is to try to figure out how a planting is going to work in your operation. Is it something that, you really want to put a lot of it out on the landscape and that works, financially or physically out on the landscape? Or is it something like this? This is a picture of a field border. So basically it's buffering kind of a wet edge and where a lot of times our crops maybe aren't productive on the field edge. Here we go. We've got an opportunity for pollinator planting. Is it something like this? This is a project I helped with. You can see the color variation in these fields. So it's a wet fields. And so these landowners decided that because they could only get a crop on the really dry years, they're taking it all out and putting it into pollinator habitat. So that's a full field planting. Or here's another example where you've got a different type of setup. The lower picture here in the bottom, they're kind of these odd ends of fields, and we took and left in the field acres what made sense for this producer's equipment to go back down, and the rest of it we took out because it was steep, and we planted a pollinator habitat. And even though this picture is from year one, it doesn't look fantastic, but it does look pretty good now. So it's just kind of utilizing what you have available. And so if we're talking about doing a planting, it is really important to assess what you have currently on the property. You might have some good stuff out there. And so being able to kind of identify that, and maybe you can add to what you already have to make it bigger and more block-like, then that's a good thing. And, really identifying some of those marginal areas that if they're not good for crops, or if it's not really working and there's a lot of, say weeds, and maybe you want to convert it, those are the places that habitat creation can be really beneficial. If you're trying to assess it and you're trying to figure out what the heck is out there, then someone like me, we do a lot of site visits, but there's also a lot of opportunities to learn on your own. I'm old school and I like books. So these are my two favorite books that I use when I'm in the field, if I'm trying to ID stuff. A lot of people like to use some apps. So there's different apps, the Google Lens or Seek, or I like the Wisconsin Wildflowers app as well. So there's different opportunities, a way to learn if you're by yourself. And this one I wanted to add too, because I actually utilize this one a ton if you're trying to identify butterflies for fun. If you can manage to take a picture of one, they have some great pictures on this website, and they definitely, people can post when they've been seeing them. So you can kind of track where things are at, and it's definitely a really good website. There's a lot of cool, really good ID pictures in here. And then as we're still thinking about these plantings, kind of where it is in relation to our farm or to our property. So, if we can think about larger is better, blocks are better than long and linear. Like this picture on the left, everybody wants a lawn, right? But do we need 5 acres of lawn? Probably not. If we can maybe utilize some of those other spaces, then that would be ideal. And this picture on the right too, it's a farmstead surrounded by crops, surrounded by woods. Well, maybe there's a lot of green on there that's kind of just getting mowed. So maybe we have an opportunity to utilize that space in a different way to provide pollinator habitat. So when we're talking about pollinator habitat, now we're getting into the good stuff, right? We're talking about planting natives. And so our native species are ones that are best adapted to our local growing season, our climate, and our soils. So if you're going to do any type of planting, you really want to make sure that the seeds or plants that you're purchasing are ones that are from, this upper Midwest, to the plain states type of Midwest area. You want to really make sure you're not picking up seeds from Kentucky, from Florida, or from, further west. Make sure they're from this Midwestern area. Our native plantings are also really good habitat for our game species. So if you're, a hunter, it's not like you're getting rid of habitat for them. You're actually enhancing it. So that's all good. And most of our pollinators are adapted to feed or utilize these specific plants. And so you really want to make sure to use a variety in your plantings. So looking at that pollinator planting, you want to use species that have that continuous bloom. And so this graphic on the right, if you look at it, you're trying to get plants that'll show up as early as possible and flower all through the growing season, and then flower as late as possible. So you're providing as much as you can, as long as you can. And it's also really important to have a variety in those species, the colors, and the flower structure. So if you've got a lot of the same family, say the asters, well, you're not going to have anything flowering early or even in the middle part of the year, because they are kind of a late bloomer. Plus, they all kind of generally look the same. And so you're only going to be hosting those specific pollinators that utilize that. So you want to mix your flower families, you want to mix your structure, bigger plants that get nice and sturdy, as well as bushy types of plants. It all provides diversity. And when you have diversity, you have resiliency, and more things are going to come in and utilize it. So just an example here. So these are some on the left here. The white flower is turtlehead. And so you can see how it's kind of a big chunky flower, but bumblebees are the pollinators of that one because they're the only ones that are big enough and strong enough to kind of force their way into that one. The sunflower here in the middle, you can see it's open and there's a beetle on it actually. And so because they're big and clunky, they're gonna like those open flowers that they can crawl around on. And then on the right is the spotted mint. And so the flower part of this is actually the white that's in between the purple sepals there, is that, you know, it's long and tubular. So again, specific pollinators for those specific things, but you want all of these in a planting. And then these are just some examples of how we would add all of these in. So these are early bloomers. So going left to right, we got golden Alexander, some penstemon, and prairie smoke. These are early bloomers. We got our mid bloomers, lead plant, butterfly milkweed, and compass plant. And then our late bloomers. So this is New England aster, stiff goldenrod, and gentian. So you can see how all of those species have a variety of different things going on, and you want all of those and then some in your planting. And so we're talking about flowers here, but we can't forget our grasses. We want to make sure we include some of those because those hollow, stiff stems are really important to have as well for overwintering pollinators, and as well as potentially if fire is going to be introduced with a way to manage a prairie planting, grass is really helpful in carrying fire. And then also just thinking about what to include in a planting or in a farm site. We generally don't have enough of our native shrubs. If the landscape lends itself to being an opportunity to put shrubs on it, I would encourage that just because we don't have enough, and generally they're early bloomers and really important for our bees that come out right away in the year. All right. So we're talking about planting, but I just wanted to emphasize the fact that habitat work and plantings in particular, they don't happen overnight. It really takes patience and persistence. It can be really tough, and you actually do need some mental toughness because we are used to planting something and having it show up that same growing season and look great. Well, with a native planting, it's thinking takes time. And so we always use this as our motto to try to follow, is that year 1, it sleeps, year 2, it creeps, and year 3, it leaps. So there has to be some patience because they're kind of working on developing their root structure early on. And then it's not really until year 3 and later that really you're going to see that diversity in a lot of flower species. So have patience. This is an example of a planting that my family did. It looks like junk. It looks pretty rough during year 1. It's a lot of annual weeds, and there's some black-eyed Susans out there, and everyone thinks, crap, I failed, I didn't do it right. And so definitely then that's it's hard to see. But so anyway, that's year 1. Year 2 is a little more consistent, where you're starting to see some new stuff come in, some different species. Maybe some of the grasses start to show up, and then it's not until about year 4 to 5 plus that you really start to see that diversity and structure, like some of these pictures, and maybe a little more grass depending on the type of planting that you did. So it's really important to have that patience and wait for it, as well as be managing when you're weed management and working on it during those years, and not just planting it and walking away from it. Okay, so that was if you have a landowner, you have access to some acres. What if you're not a landowner, but you still want to help, which is awesome. We need those people for sure. And so this slide, I just wanted to throw out there because we're talking about pollinators. We've got to talk a little bit about milkweed. Not sure if everyone knows, but we actually have 12 different milkweeds here in Wisconsin, which is really cool. A lot of people are pretty familiar with maybe about 3 of them, maybe 4, but there's actually 12. And so, maybe you're not going to be able to plant a ton of it on a property, but maybe you could grow it and someone that has property. So maybe there's different ways that you can work that out. And something I learned semi-recently is that I didn't know this, but the white stuff, the downy, soft stuff that comes out of milkweed, it's called floss. So if you need a trivia question at some future date, throw that out there and see how many people know about it. So floss. So another way to help if you don't have a large chunk of acres, it could be something as simple as planting a septic mound. If you have a septic mound, a lot of different seed companies, seed vendors now have options for seed mixes that are septic safe. I have this one from Prairie Moon here only because it fit in my slide picture, but there's a lot of the nurseries all have that option. So any one that you're in particular to, they should have one. The other thing is, if in small scale plantings, it's really good to utilize the plant plugs. They get that jump a little bit early. they're still going to take their time to kind of get going, but you can see on this picture on the left how robust they are compared to, say, seeds. You're able to get that jump a little bit more. And on the right, that's my godson Heath, and we did a small little burn and interseeding last year, and so he was helping me mix seed here. But so small scale is still really important. As well as something similar to this, I helped my cousin and I did a little planting at our church, and so you can see it's not very big, but I think we had about 18 different species of plugs that we put in there, mix of grass and forbs, and so that's something that we're adding to the landscape, even if it is small. Any type of situation where you've got a little bit of soil out there, you can plant pollinator habitat. Now, if you don't have any soil, and that's okay, then the other way is to spread the word. Use your knowledge to share with your friends, your family, your neighbor. We find in the conservation world that word of mouth is the way to get conservation done. They may not want to listen to a conservation professional, but they probably will listen to their neighbor. And if their neighbor got something to work, they will trust their neighbor in order to do that. So talking about it is important, as well as the opportunity to participate in citizen science. There's a lot of different things going on out there. One example is the bumblebee brigade that the DNR does, trying to track and identify where our bumblebees are at. There's a lot of things out there that people can add to the science community and help out that way. Another thing you can do is donate. Money talks, and as long as you can find a group that is doing things that you are passionate about, that you care about, there's a lot of groups here, specifically in Wisconsin, that are doing fantastic things. So maybe you can't plant or do those types of things, but if you have the ability to donate, then there's a lot of groups that will do good things with that money. Volunteering is another option. And so one thing that I wanted to kind of highlight, we've got a lot of different land trusts and other groups like Pheasants Forever that are doing habitat work on the landscape. One group here that I think does a great job is the Prairie Enthusiasts. So that's their map of their chapters in the center of this slide. And on the left, it's a snip from just a couple weeks ago for their events. They have all their events posted, so you can go and help collect seed in the fall time. You can kill buckthorn and woody stuff in the winter. There's all kinds of different opportunities to be able to volunteer time. Even so, if you don't have property yourself, you will be helping on some of these really rare and unique sites. All right, and then just to kind of finish, because I'm talking about planting prairies, it just doesn't happen by itself. And so what I spend a lot of my time on is trying to help folks understand and try to make them mesh with some of these cost share assistance. And I'm going to kind of breeze through these, so it's not going to be too intense here, but the world of government programs is basically alphabet soup, which is what we are here to try to help as a farm bill biologist. And so a couple of these programs, these next couple of slides, are part of the USDA, Department of Ag, which the Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS, would be the ones that are the ones that are in charge of these programs. But also, this is what happens. You end up with a lot of government acronyms, so just be prepared. So just real quick, CRP, the Conservation Reserve Program, is probably what most people are familiar with. It's basically just taking crop ground that's marginal, or if a landowner wants to create habitat, taking that crop ground out of production, planting habitat, and getting an annual rental payment for it. It doesn't have to be pollinator habitat. It could be something like a filter strip to buffer waterway or other things, but we as a PF staff, we definitely encourage lots of native plantings if we can. The Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, or CREP, so that is definitely part of CRP, but it's similar in the sense that it's annual rental payments, but it's protecting waterways. So it's really specific to water quality, and it's only offered in these yellow counties here. EQIP, which is the other probably most common one with NRCS, is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. There's a ton of different practices, from forestry to farmstead improvement, but we utilize the pollinator planting or native planting access or practice a lot. And so there's definitely a lot of opportunities through there. CSP is basically where the Conservation Stewardship Program is where, say, a farm is doing a lot of good conservation work and they need a little bit of monetary assistance to do even more. And that's kind of what that program is all about. And then lastly, this one's kind of specific to wetlands, but it's the wetland reserve easement. So this is where someone had a wetland, they ditched, tiled, and drained it to farm it. And then now they want to turn it back into a wetland. So it's pretty specific, but this is also a program that NRCS and Pheasants Forever works closely with. All right, deep breath. Those are the government farm bill programs. And so then there's a couple other options. So if you're, thinking about what might fit on your property, if that's something that you are interested in, then those are great. But there also is some other non-farm bill options. Fish and Wildlife Service has a private land biologist, just like Pheasants Forever does. We work really closely with them. A lot of times they're looking at oak savannas or bluff prairies or wetlands, a little more specific to kind of some rare habitats, but they definitely do a lot of good work on the landscape. Again, in partnership with us a lot of times. Our county conservation departments, depending what county, they might have opportunities where they're can cost share for some native plantings. There's a lot of different things going on in different counties. So getting to know your land conservation departments is important as well. Things like our Pheasants Forever chapters. Some of our chapters are willing to help private landowners with native plantings on their property. And so getting to know your farm bill biologist will help you figure this out. And then lastly, one that doesn't get utilized a ton, but I think could be, is that if somebody has, say, 2 acre or more planting, basically these guys will help make a seed mix and then basically pay for the seed. So it's something to check out if that might fit your farm setup. And then just some other last things is that there's a lot of different opportunities for other organizations to have grants that might be really small in scale, but might be specific and might fit on your farm. Things like farmer-led watershed groups that do prairie strips or field borders to protect water, or if there's just other conservation groups that might have small amounts of money to do brush work, brush management. So there's all kinds of opportunities. But that's, again, just another point to most of the time our farm bill biologists have a good beat on what's going on. So I'd encourage that, or just reaching out and seeing what's there. All right. So in conclusion, I guess basically the way to get pollinator habitat out there is whatever works for you. So spend time to try to figure out what works best. If it's one that you have land and you want to put acres into pollinator habitat, then great. Or if it's any of those other options, you find that, you'd rather just kind of, you don't either have that choice or you are willing to volunteer and spend time. That would be fantastic. All of it is going to help our pollinators and our wildlife habitat out on the landscape. And so again, because I take way too many pictures of plants and pollinators, I'm going to just finish with a few of those just because they're my favorite. Being able to take and experience some of these prairies and different species that are out there is really important. And be observant when you're out there. Trying to assess and ID what's out there just makes that world open up in a new way, definitely. So I encourage you anytime to get out and check out a local prairie, because there's a lot of good pollinators out there. So that's what I have. So thank you very much.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Britta. I need a whole another couple of hours to sit with everything you just shared. So much wisdom. Thank you so much. That was really fascinating. Up next, we have another inspiring woman who has been leading initiatives on their land. Skye is our citizen scientist for today's webinar. And Skye is the coordinator for the Wisconsin Monarch Collaborative and also a farmer. She and her husband founded Circadian Organics in Ferryville, Wisconsin, where they previously ran a CSA, and now focus on growing vegetables and flower seeds for their new retail venture, Driftless Seeds. As the coordinator for Wisconsin Monarch Collaborative, Skye works with partners from over 50 other organizations, agencies, and groups in Wisconsin that work to establish monarch habitat in the state. Skye recently earned her PhD in entomology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison with a research focus on butterfly conservation and ecology in Wisconsin grasslands. Her work centered on optimizing butterfly habitats in both protected and pastured grasslands for monarchs and other butterfly species. So welcome, Skye. Thank you so much. And we're really excited to hear what you have to share with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say, Britta, that was an awesome presentation. I feel like you got so much in there. And I have the really kind of easier and maybe fun job of just showing a bunch of pictures about and talking about what we've done on our land. There was just so much great information in that presentation, and I'm so impressed. So yeah, we can move on to my presentation here, where I have some photos, bunch of photos to share with you, and I'm telling you a little bit about myself, and hopefully I'll be able to help you in similar ways to Britta has shown you some resources and some ways to establish prairie on your own land, and inspire you. So again, I'm Skye. I am a farmer, and I've previously been a PhD researcher. I'm currently the coordinator at the Wisconsin Monarch Collaborative. I've been surveying prairies for over 5 years and specialize in monarch habitat work. This picture was taken during my PhD, where we were doing research on monarchs and how they interact with their landscapes on a landscape scale. So on a kind of a zoomed out picture. And we wrote this paper about monarchs and their landscape and local variables that affect them in Midwest grasslands. So if you're curious about how habitat should be put onto landscapes, you can read this article if you'd like, but I can sum it up for you too. This research was really diving into whether or not monarchs needed small or large patches of habitat and whether those patches need to be connected or not. And what we found is that monarchs, as really strong flyers and really good navigators, are able to utilize habitat even if it's really isolated. And so what I want you to get out of this is that this idea that if you build it, they will come. Monarchs are really likely to find their host plant, milkweed, if you've planted it. And they also, of course, need, that's what they eat as caterpillars. So if you're feeding those hungry caterpillars with milkweed, you're doing a great job. But also including pollinator plants like blooming plants like sunflowers and all of these other bee balm and all these other species that Britta has talked about, and I'll talk a little bit about too, are excellent for monarchs. So yeah, if you build it, they will come, even if you are in the middle of a lot of corn and soy fields. Planting habitat is going to bring you monarchs. You will see them. And so I've been really lucky to work with some amazing folks at UW-Madison for this work, including Dr. Karen Oberhauser, who was the previous director of the Arboretum, and Claudio Berton, who were both my advisors at UW-Madison. So yeah, been really lucky to soak up a ton of knowledge and information about monarchs, and always happy to talk to folks about monarchs or other butterflies, which are kind of my specialty, but pollinators in general. This is a little bit more about my work. After I focused a lot on monarchs, I decided I wanted to branch out and look at all butterfly species and really focus on how butterflies and agricultural areas interact. So I started a new project on grazing in my latter years of my PhD work, and I was focused on looking at grazing management. So whether the way that we graze cattle actually affects the butterflies that we have on lands. And so I looked at rotational grazing and set stock grazing, also known as continuous grazing, and compared whether rotating cattle or keeping the cattle all in the same paddock or same field, I guess, every for the entire summer had an effect on the butterflies that we see there, both diversity and abundance. And we saw higher abundance in rotationally grazed pastures. So if you are a grazer and you're doing rotational grazing, keep up the good work. If you've thought about switching to rotational grazing, I highly encourage it. It's really great for butterflies to have an area of refuge that is not being grazed, as well as an area, these paddocks that are able to recover their growth and rejuvenate and even bloom while they're not being grazed really helps out butterflies. So I also love to talk about grazing. I've been on a lot of farms doing monitoring as well as prairies. And if you ever are curious about what butterflies you have on your farm, you can do surveying. I love the recommendation that Britta had of using wisconsinbutterflies.org. That is a wonderful resource, and I post on there sometimes and log the butterflies that I find. But if you want, there's this great book called Butterflies of the North Woods. And this is a great ID book for your butterflies in Wisconsin and Michigan and Minnesota too. But yeah, used it a lot during my research, and it's a wonderful resource, as well as Wisconsin butterflies. So I was so proud and happy to have some of this grazing research actually featured in National Geographic last year. They almost got the caption right. It's, they have this caption that they said I was studying the abundance of monarch butterflies in grazed areas versus those that are not grazed. And, they almost got it right. It's rotational grazing versus set stock grazing. But anyway, it was so cool to work with a photographer on this. And I thought he just captured this gorgeous photo of a monarch on a thistle in a pasture. This is at Uplands Cheese in Dodgeville, Wisconsin. So great folks there, and just one of the many awesome farmers that I worked with to do this research. And then last year in August, I graduated. I'm so excited to have my PhD complete and be on to other things. And so when I graduated, I joined the team at the Wisconsin Monarch Collaborative as their coordinator. And I had worked with this group in my PhD, or throughout my PhD, as we have a number of working groups, and I was a co-lead for the research and monitoring working group within the Wisconsin Monarch Collaborative. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, I graduated and joined on as the coordinator. And in the Wisconsin Monarch Collaborative, we partner with, as Allison mentioned, over 50 partner organizations and agencies, and we have this goal of adding over 119 that should say million. I'm sorry. This is a mistake actually, but this should say 119 million stems of milkweed embedded into a matrix of diverse nectar resources throughout the state by 2038. So I think I made a mistake here, because we have this goal is actually incorporated into a larger regional goal of adding over 2 billion stems. So I should fix that, but it is 119 million, still a ton of stems that we need to add. And that's why we're doing this sort of all hands on deck kind of method, and incorporating and trying to get together all of these partners to coordinate and collaborate and leverage resources so that we can plant milkweed. And you can be a part of that effort too. We have lots of resources to share, and this conservation strategy is just one of them. It details out all of the goals and strategies for our 6 working groups. So we have communications and outreach working group, an agriculture working group, protected lands, a rights of way, which incorporates transportation and energy utility groups, and an urban and green space working group, as well as a research and monitoring working group, which I was a member of while I was in my graduate school years. So if you want to check this out, this is available online. I think I put a link in the available links if someone wants to put that in the chat. But the Wisconsin Monarch Conservation Strategy has a ton of resources and kind of outlines all the goals and the ways in which these working groups are trying to add these milkweed stems to our state. So it's really exciting. The monarch is indeed, as Britta mentioned, imperiled and is in all likelihood going to be listed as threatened in come December, unless they move the date again. But this is what I hear from our partners at U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and just knowing the population drop of the monarch. So a lot of this work, pollinator work, is focused on monarchs. They are really well known. They are known to be a conservation flagship species. So they kind of fly the flag of conservation for pollinators, and often the conservation work that we do for monarchs helps other butterfly and pollinator species. So it's a great way to kind of get involved and get started on pollinator knowledge, is diving into the monarch world. I like to refer to them as a gateway bug because they can really open up people's worlds and start learning about other host plants other than milkweed, but monarchs are huge there. So in addition to the Wisconsin Monarch, I actually have one more resource to share with you. This is a resource that we came up with at the Wisconsin Monarch Collaborative, and this and other resources are available on our website at wisconsinmonarchs.org. WImonarchs.org. It's up at the top here, and I think that there can be a link in the chat too. But we have lots of resources available in these kind of different sectors of our working groups. And then some general resources like this one, which will just show you species that monarchs really like to nectar on. So, and it tells you a little bit about how to either turn your yard into a prairie habitat or use these species to seed out a new prairie. And these are all great options. They bloom throughout the year. We like to really encourage people to plant species that bloom on the shoulders of the season while monarchs are migrating. So milkweed is always good to plant, but while monarchs are migrating north from Mexico and then south from Canada, north in the spring and south in the fall, they really need blooming plants to fuel their flight. So that nectar gives them energy to fly and navigate, and that's why we really encourage those bloomers, prolific bloomers on the shoulders of the season. But all native species are really important. So yeah, these are just a few that we encourage people to plant. I mentioned, and I think it was mentioned earlier, that I also am a co-founder of Circadian Organics, a small vegetable and flower farm in Ferryville, Wisconsin, which is in the very southwest corner of the state. We're about 15 minutes from the Mississippi, close to Viroqua. And me and my husband Dylan started Circadian Organics in 2018, and we started off as a CSA farm. We really enjoyed that. We loved growing fruits and vegetables and flowers. Actually, we had a flower CSA too for really awesome folks in the Madison area and some in the La Crosse area too, and in the Viroqua area. And while we loved that, we got totally enthralled by growing seeds. We had a few seed contracts with companies like High Mowing, and some other larger seed companies, and we got really fascinated with growing seeds, both vegetables and flowers. And we realized that we don't really have a hyper-local seed company in at least our southwest corner of Wisconsin, and basically in Wisconsin at large. There are a couple, but not many that grow a lot of their seeds in Wisconsin here. So we started Driftless Seeds, and that is a venture with other farms as well. So it's not just Circadian Organics, but I'll talk about some of the seeds that we grow here on our farm that contribute to the seeds at Driftless Seeds. I also just wanted to introduce a couple other members of our family. We have a couple of dogs. This is Nesta in the front here and Luna in the back. I'm glad they're not barking right now. They basically share a brain cell, so sometimes, you know, it's a fun time on the farm, but they definitely bring the humor to the farm here. We also I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we also have pigs. We got a couple of pigs that we have that eat the waste from our seed projects. So we grow a lot of vegetables that we thin out in order to keep the best ones to keep seed from. And so pigs, they are small here on the left side of the photos, left side here, and then they've gotten a little bigger. This is a more recent photo of them in their pen. But I just love the pigs. They are really wonderful, and they help us keep the waste down. So I also just wanted to feature, some of you even may know, my mother-in-law, Sarah Tedeschi, who has really been a guiding figure for us on the farm. She previously ran a CSA on the same land. And so me and my husband Dylan have so much gratitude for her and all that she's taught us. And he grew up on the farm here with her. So, and just has, they've both really been driving factors in keeping our farm going. And so here we are with Dylan and Sarah, and they are packaging our flower CSA in this photo. And then also just really wanted to mention briefly that we are so lucky to have Dylan's grandparents on the farm. Actually, so his grandfather passed away just last year, but we still feel him with us every day, and they have really been amazing sources of inspiration and encouragement for us to be on the farm and doing what we do. So John and Ann Tedeschi are definitely always in our hearts here as well. So Ann still lives on the farm, and we hang out and talk about flowers a bunch, so it's great. We, as I mentioned, started Driftless seeds. This past year was our first retail year, so very exciting for us to have this going. We've worked really hard to start this and worked really hard on the graphic design and the packaging and all of these things. So if you see us in your local co-op or greenhouse or hardware store, give us a shot. We think we grow really great seed. Most of it's organic, 80% of it's organic, and 80% of it is also grown in Wisconsin. A little bit of it is grown in Iowa too, with some partners there. But yeah, really excited about this. We're trying to make it out into more co-ops. So if you don't see us in your co-op, you can put a request in and a suggestion, and we'd love to be there. We, as I mentioned, grow a lot of seeds on our farm, and I wanted to feature, while most of our retail is vegetable seed, we grow a lot of native seeds for Driftless seeds on our farm. This is blue vervain and a big long block of it. And I love this species. This is a wonderful pollinator species, a great species to include in your prairie mix or in your mix for your yard. Rose milkweed, of course, had to include this. It is a monarch habitat host plant, so a great species for wetter areas, also known as swamp milkweed, and it's just got these gorgeous pink blooms. So a big long block of this as well in our wetter field here that we go for Driftless seeds. And also really wanted to mention, some people say, how can I attract monarchs? And I always say plant milkweed, but also plant meadow blazing star. This is a wonderful species. It's known as the monarch magnet because if you plant it, you will see monarchs. They love this. There is something in the either aromatics that this plant puts off or something that these monarchs just are totally attracted to it. So we have a bunch of Liatris ligulostylus, the meadow blazing star, and I always encourage people, if they're not seeing monarchs on their milkweed, try planting this. It does bloom later in the year, but it might get the monarchs to have kind of this pattern where they see your land and they know there's either Liatris, meadow blazing star. There's a lot of Liatris species, so you have to get this one, meadow blazing star, ligulostylus. But yeah, this is a really great one to attract monarchs. And hopefully will be available at Driftless Seeds catalog next year. It's not available right now, but it's coming. And we also have a ton of early sunflower. This is a really great species that blooms the first year. I love this. I think it's really dynamic both for butterflies and bees. So another really great species for just like a general option. We also have done a bunch of habitat restoration work on our farm, so I just thought I'd share that. It's been really fun and definitely a labor of love and taken a lot of patience, as Britta mentioned. It takes a while to see an effect here, but we were really lucky to have Xerces Society support a 1 acre prairie of kind of land that was less productive. This used to be conventional soy. Of course, it was in rotation, but right before we seeded this area, it was conventional soy, and Xerces Society sometimes has funds for helping plant acres of pollinator habitat. So you can talk to folks there. They have people specific to Wisconsin that you can reach out to. I think I put a link in the available links, so that if that can be shared, that's great in the chat. But we were really lucky to have them sponsor this seed for 1 acre mix, and I was super happy to be a part of designing that mix too and getting a lot of diversity there. And this was in 2021, I believe. This is seeded. We're here in like January of 2021, and we are still seeing this come in. So we're 3 years in, and this is taken earlier in the spring. And you can see these are actually Zizia, Golden Alexander, that is coming up. So I was so excited to see this. We really haven't seen, it's been the first year that we've started to see pollinator plants coming up. So still a lot of grasses and things that non-native grasses and annual weeds, but we're starting to see more and more of it take over. You can see quite a bit of this Zizia if you look closely. It's kind of peppered throughout.
This is so great. Oh my goodness, so much amazing information. We're just going to take a quick pause for
Sure.
a couple of announcements, and then we can get
Yes.
to some questions and slides. We're going to take a
Definitely.
quick pause. Thank you so much for all this information.
Yes, sure thing.
And actually, before we do that, actually, we're going to, before we get to the Q&A, we'd love to get a photo of everybody here. We're going to take a screenshot. So if everybody get yourself ready, and my colleague, if you could turn on your camera, that'd be great, so we can see everybody here. And my colleague Sarah is going to take it. So Sarah, let us know when you're ready.
And Skye, we'll get you back to your presentation in just a second. Okay, I'm going to take a photo in just a second if everybody's ready. And fantastic. Perfect. Thank you. Great. And yeah, go back to you, Allison.
Great. So it is, do you want to do a couple WiWiC announcements though, Sarah?
Yes, we'll do a couple WiWiC. Do you want me to grab those? You got them.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I got that. Okay, great. Sorry about that, everybody. Yes. So, just another reminder to join us at our summer field days. We still have some of those. We have bus tours, or you could register. We will have a whole slew of fall learning circles coming up across the state. So please register for those. Also, I don't know if you knew, but Wisconsin Women in Conservation has a podcast, which is an amazing way to learn more from different women across the state that are doing great conservation work. Also, feel free to join our WiWiC listserv. That's a great place to hear more about what other folks are doing, answer questions. You can send an email to info@wiwic.org to join. And we also have a blog. So on our website, there's a blog as well. And then just wanted to also say to save the date for our Fall Educators Meetup, which is going to be on November 14th in 2024 from 10 to 11:30. So, and also just to say, no, it's getting almost to 1 o'clock. So if you have to go, we understand that's completely okay. But if you're able to stay on a little bit, would love to hear the rest of what Skye has to share with us and answer some of your questions. So feel free to hang on if you can, but if you need to hop off, we understand, and please enjoy the rest of your day. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Skye.
Hi, yeah, again, so sorry about going over here. I didn't even realize how long I was going, so I appreciate the shout out so that we could pause for a moment. I'll try to finish up here quickly. Just a couple more instances of pollinator plantings on our farm. Sarah, my mother-in-law, has a really great micro prairie that is a 1/4 acre that we've seeded together, which is really lovely, and it's definitely a feature on the farm. In addition to the seeded habitat that we got help from Xerces Society, we also received one of their habitat kits, which I really encourage you to apply for. They should be having it every year now. I think there's a link you can get in the chat. And this is a before of this area. We planted this with a habitat kit. You can get plugs. So I'll show you what I mean by that in a second if you don't know. But this is after. This picture was taken today. Actually, it's looking really good. Plugs are a great way to do a small area and get a really quick turnaround in terms of the blooms. So really love the habitat work that Xerces helps out with. This is another shot of that habitat. It's looking great. Very excited about that. And this is what I mean by plugs. You get plants that have already been started shipped to you, or you pick them up. So you can plant those. It is a lot of hard work. You need to make sure to water it in. The process for this for us was to mow down what was there, cut it really short. Then we tilled it to get that bare ground. And then we planted it and mulched it. I think this is really crucial if you're planting plugs. Hopefully it's a smaller area because a larger area is harder to mulch. But getting a smaller area mulched can make the weeds a lot easier to deal with. So I also just wanted to really quickly plug that you can get free milkweed seed throughout Wisconsin from the Wisconsin Monarch Collaborative and the Southern Wisconsin Bird Alliance. And there's a milkweed request form that you can check back later in 2024. It'll be open again. Right now it's closed, but you can always email Brenna at this email address if you would like to get some free milkweed seed. Another resource is that you can get free milkweed plugs, like I was talking about, the plants that have already started growing through Monarch Watch. We have done this. It's a great resource, and they will send you free milkweed plugs. You do have to pay for shipping, but it's well worth it, and it's a great way to get free milkweed plugs. And then last thing I wanted to share is, I think this is the last thing, cost share and technical assistance for prairie restorations is also available, not only through folks like Britta at Pheasants Forever, but also through U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they are running a program currently to help with financial and technical assistance for restoration projects as small as a 1/4 acre. So I included his contact information. He has encouraged me to share this out with everyone that I talk to, and you can reach out to him. I think it can also be put in the chat if anyone's curious. But yeah, definitely reach out. They have a lot available, and it's all kind of centered on this Monarch grant. Right, so I think that's all I have. I am so grateful to share these last slides. They're crucial if folks wanted to get that help that we've seen on our farm tour too. So thank you.
Thank you, Skye, for the resources, for the knowledge, for sharing your experience. It's so great. I'm going to hand this off to my colleague Mercedes, who has been monitoring the chat so that we can answer some of your questions.
Great, perfect. So I'm just going to jump right in here. The first questions that I have are for Britta, but Skye, if you'd like to share, please share your knowledge. Also, thinking about climate change, are there adjustments or additions that we should be making in species selection?
Well, Skye, you should probably jump on this one too. I mean, I feel like I somewhat here, like conflicting a little bit on like trying to plant southern species up here, you know, into this northern region. So I guess my default answer to that is always to plant just more diversity, and find the species that really currently are, you know, filling that niche now and really can provide a lot of different opportunities of filling that. I mean, more diversity will just build more resiliency. Skye, I don't know if you have anything specific to add on that one.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I would also say look for seeds that are grown in our area. So we like to talk about these things, these concepts as ecotypes. And if you can find native seeds that are grown, especially in our state or even better in your region of the state, that'll be the most equipped to adapt with changing temperatures and climate. So that's all I would add.
Cool, great, perfect. The next question is, are those being cost share thing, like opportunities available for only large scale or acre minimums? This is specifically for CRP.
No, there's no acre minimums for CRP. I feel like it's it's a government program, so it takes a little bit of paperwork and finagling. So I think that's like what does that cost to the landowner is the important part. Like, how willing are you to deal with that in order to get what you want? There might be other programs that better fit if it's really small scale. But no, there is no minimum. Generally speaking, I would just say the more, again, like blocks or bigger you can do is better, but you use what you have. So I would just say that, yeah, no minimum, but some other factors that, would help with that answer, I guess.
Cool, perfect. And then these came up during Skye's presentation, but again, Britta, feel free to answer. Does habitat need to be a particular size or concentration to be effective? For example, should a small planting be dense with plants?
Oh, this is a really good question. I guess it depends on your definition of small and dense, but when I do like that habitat kit planting that I was showing you, you'll get advice to plant, between 1 foot and 2 feet apart, and I tend to just squeeze them together. I plant 1 foot apart, and then in terms of when you're spreading seed, I would just go with the density recommendations that you can receive from places like Prairie Moon, and there are density recommendations out there, and it really depends on the species. But yeah, if you have plugs, I go ahead and plant them 1 foot apart, or sometimes even closer if they're smaller species. Like, I don't know, prairie clover can be even closer.
Yeah, and I think you're always going to have some that get eaten by bunnies or
Yes.
eat them, you know, so like you're going to lose some just like, you know, like you would in a tree planting. So I feel like, yeah, a little denser to start is better, you know.
Yeah. And things like Monarda bee balm will spread quite a bit. So if it's in the mint family, maybe give it a little more space, but generally, yeah, a foot apart is good.
Great, perfect. Next question, is there a benefit to that a pasture? Is there a benefit to that pasture by having pollinators there? I see how rotational grazing benefits pollinators, but is the reverse also true, and are there any studies?
Oh, well, that's a great question. There are not a lot of studies on grazing and pollinators and how they affect each other in that way. At least I haven't seen many. So the one thing that I can think of is it's not really pollinator related, but having rotational grazing can also help with dung beetle populations, which can decrease fly abundance on fields. So it's all kind of related, right? Like these things are all connected. But I would recommend, you know, rotating and having a diversity of species on pasture, native if possible. I know we have a lot of non-native species on pastures, but to help encourage native dung beetle species. I was just talking to a farmer about that the other day. So that's as kind of related as I can think, but I haven't seen any research on how increasing pollinator populations helps cattle directly. It's tough because cattle aren't a native species to the US, so they're not really co-evolved. But I would say, you know, just in the fact that dung beetles can help clean up areas on pastures is better for cattle. So you have less pink eye, less infection, less fly bites on cattle if you have more dung beetles.
Perfect. Cool. And then what books were recommended during your talk, Skye? Could you reiterate them, or maybe we'll just share your pull them from your presentation and email. But what is that one?
Backwards on my screen, but maybe it's frontwards on your screen. I'm not sure. It's Butterflies of the North Woods.
Okay, perfect.
It's by Larry Weber, W-E-B.
Nice.
So yeah, Butterflies of the North Woods.
Perfect. And then the next question is, been hearing a lot about the absence of butterflies and hummingbirds around the word from around the state from various UW extension Zoom classes. Anyone noticing the same? Can anybody echo that, I guess?
I mean, yeah.
I'm in the southeast part of the state. Hi, I'm Jeannie. I'm just joining your beautiful conversation. I've been out in our prairies today. So we have pollinators that seem to be missing right now. And I kind of equate it to my understanding of your degree temperature days. We've had a lot of rain inundate things and kind of cool down the temperature from our local populations, so they're not up to their hot temperatures. But I kind of think of what happened when Texas got flooded, as far as monarchs. I have the same question.
In terms of monitoring, what I'm hearing and seeing throughout the state is that many butterfly species are lower. We have some species that are also higher this year, but some really sensitive species, including monarchs, we're seeing lower numbers than usual. So I'm just going to send a link in the chat, which is a link to the MLMP, which is the Monarch Larva Monitoring Project. And this is state results for Wisconsin for this year. And you can see they went up in May, down in June. There's usually a lag in June where we have lower numbers because we're waiting on the next generation to, and these are eggs through all of the caterpillar, instars, and also pupa observations. These are not adult observations. But there's usually a little lag in June, but we've seen a much longer lag and low numbers in June and into July. Usually these numbers are hitting their peak at this time in July, and they're really low. So in terms of monarchs, I think this is true. In terms of some of our super endangered species, like the swamp meadowlark, which is little known, but we have a few populations in Wisconsin. We have not seen those on our usual butterfly hikes with the Southern Wisconsin Butterfly Association. So yeah, I think we are seeing lower numbers, and it is alarming, and bees too in a way. So I don't know what other people's experience is.
Cool. Great. Thanks for that. We're going to kind of fly through these next questions, hopefully, so we can get out of here semi on time or just a little late. Any tips for, and this is definitely going to be a more robust question. Any tips for weed control? We had a 0.2 acre backyard plot overrun with garlic mustard nettles of the likes. Just couldn't keep up with the string trimmer mowing, etc.
Yeah, it's super tough. I mean, getting it before things go to seed is really important, especially for that garlic mustard, and pulling them out by the root. I know it's tempting to just cut it down, and that can be helpful, but sometimes it feels like you're fighting a really tough battle. So I go in there and manually pull out weeds in my small plantings, and get out as much root as possible. And then mulch, as I mentioned. Mulch can really help if you have it planted. But yeah, it's really tough, especially, I mean, nettles are a native species and they are a host plant for many butterflies. So it might, it might hurt a little bit, but it is good in a way for butterflies. So just get some other species going in there too, and you'll have a more diverse planting.
Cool. Thank you. How do you treat aspen in prairie, cut stem, or chemicals that wouldn't harm the prairie plants?
I don't have a lot of experience with aspen. I saw this question and I was thinking, I'm not sure what to say. It sounds like maybe this is an area that is a bit more wooded, and so you might consider going along with that pattern of the ecosystem and planting more woody species, some spring ephemerals. I mean, I definitely encourage prairie plantings in areas that are open grassland, but if it's a more woody area, sometimes it's best to just go along with that natural pattern of succession. So if you can get some spring blooming species in there, like I would encourage you to plant Virginia bluebells. But I don't know if I would encourage controlling the aspen if it's doing its thing there. It is also a host plant for a number of butterfly species. So just by having that aspen exist there, you actually are feeding some caterpillars. Yeah, maybe look at it a different way.
Perfect. And then the last one, how do you prevent the spread of Queen Anne's lace?
I have a ton of Queen Anne's lace in that seeded planting, the 1 acre planting up on our top land, the ridge here, and mowing the first few years is going to be really big before it goes to seed. It is really hard to take out Queen Anne's lace. It is okay for bees. Bees do like it, but it's a non-native species. This says, why do you want to eradicate Queen Anne's lace? Yeah, it is a non-native species, so it's not going to be locally adapted and co-evolved with any of our local native pollinators. Although bees do use it, it's true. But it's best it can really take over, really. So it can be kind of invasive.
Gotcha. There's a previous question up a little bit further that was the how, but now we have the why, which is really great.
I see that. Okay.
Yeah, so good getting 2 questions done, and perfect. Thanks so much, everybody. That's all the questions we had. The last question, are there any women in conservation events in central or eastern Wisconsin? Check out our website at the events page and see kind of what's upcoming. There will be more events posted as they come up.
Thank you, everybody. With that, we're gonna wrap it up and let you all head to whatever the rest of your day entails. Hopefully it's hanging out in a beautiful prairie. And just want to say thanks again for taking your lunchtime to listen and hear from such great presenters. And thank you all. And hopefully we'll see you at an event soon. All across the state, we'll have events. Check out that website, and we'll see you around.